to this, the very first edition in 2022 of the OTT.X Wednesday webinar series. Happy New Year, everybody. And we are so happy you've joined us to the series where we are delighted once again to bring you insightful, thought-provoking presentations across a broad spectrum of OTT-related topics from thought leaders across our industry. I just saw a stat that this year AVOD viewers will make up more than 50% of all digital video viewers in the US. That's a lot. At this point, AVOD has become just a regular thing. It's not really even new anymore. It's just another way that we distribute and consume content, and something that everyone that's in the space is going to be or is expected to be a part of in some way. That being the case, it's no longer enough just to be doing AVOD to succeed. We're going to have to be effective at it. That includes a great many vectors, of course, but none more important than overcoming challenges and become efficient when it comes to operations tracking and reporting, enabling businesses to scale and succeed in the ad-supported world. Today, we're fortunate to have with us someone who can help us understand how to do just that. Vince Mascarella has been at the forefront of digital distribution since the earliest days of TVOD and EST. After having built and run digital distribution operation for a leading independent studio, Vince made the transition to measurement and insights at Comscore, helping major studios, networks, and indies track the evolution of content consumption. At WIT Media, Vince combines his knowledge of content distribution and measurement to bring the company's market-leading enterprise software fast performance reporting capabilities and transformational audience data to clients who need new solutions in a rapidly evolving D2C reality. Before we get started, I also want to thank WIT Media for participating in our webinar today and for their ongoing support of OTT.X through participation and sponsorships of many of our events, discussion groups, and projects. So without further ado, please enjoy Vince's presentation, Streaming Fatigue, the Rising Popularity of AVOD, presented by WIT Media. Vince, welcome.
Hi, Eric. Hi, everyone. So quick thanks to OTT.X. You guys are awesome partners, always have been. So I really appreciate the opportunity. Hopefully this is something of value to everybody who's in attendance. We tend to see at WIT Media sort of the full spectrum because we deal with platforms, we deal with networks, we deal with studios, we deal with indies, agencies, so sort of all around. So that gives us a lot of exposure. And then we also have the ability to directly tap a pretty large panel of engaged audience members ourselves through our proprietary app, TV Time. And so we thought we'd share some of the results from a handful of surveys specifically about ad-supported, AVOD and FAST. So we'll share some of those results, talk about growth, talk about opportunities for ad-supported, and then some of the challenges, because with that growth comes growing pains, especially with the kind of velocity that we're talking about today. And what we're doing at WIT Media, some of the solutions that we have, some that we've specifically deployed, and how we can help sort of solve for some of those operational challenges. So with that, I'll go ahead and share my screen. And hopefully, if you guys can confirm, Eric, Jose, somebody?
Looks great.
Cool. This is about, it's not just streaming fatigue. I think it's more subscription fatigue. There's just so many options out there and they're all demanding a share of wallet. And there's just so many good premium options. You can't subscribe to them all, or at least most people can't subscribe to them all. And so this is really about finding alternatives and really understanding all the different choices that are out there. So what is driving ad-supported growth? It's a number of things. Number one, as I mentioned, it's subscription fatigue. Everything's demanding share of wallet, but wallet is finite, budget is finite. And subscription goes beyond even just, sort of TV and movie options. I took inventory one time of all the different subscriptions that I had, including Spotify and Audible and, video game console subscriptions. And there's just, I don't even know how many I lost track. There's greater awareness about all the different options outside of subscription as well. So FAST is continuing to get distribution. Every day you see some new announcement of a new FAST channel getting distribution on another platform. Certainly there's a lot of campaigns out there for, Peacock and other, some of the newer options from some of the bigger organizations, these media conglomerates, really pushing their acquisitions and their new platforms. The need for library monetization, it's the 80-20 rule. It's always 20% of the content that has been driving 80% of the revenue, but there's a greater need to tap into that now that we have all these deep libraries, these D2C strategies, these global D2C strategies that require deep libraries in order to prevent churn, in order to acquire new audiences. And then there's that niche appeal, especially for FAST, where it really is programming based off of interest, programming based off of mood, nostalgia, leveraging very specific brands that have awareness and a lot of viewership, and cheaper. It's cheaper essentially for platforms to acquire content on the advertising side. It requires smaller license fees or no license fees. It's ad share is the bulk of that model. And then you have ad dollars shifting away from traditional linear. There's still a long way to go. Traditional linear is still a very big part of the business, obviously, and I think that's a bit of an understatement. But there is a shift. So what's been happening? I mean, you look at Roku, the number one search thing on Roku, and these are all quotes that I'm going to show you. The number one search term is free. No real big surprise there. People always want more options, and if we don't have to pay for additional options, there's a lot of premium content on AVOD and FAST now. So people are aware and they're searching for it. Over time, we're not there yet, but over time, you see the quote from CFO at Fox Corporation, Steve Tomsic, that the expectation is that Tubi's ad revenue will eventually exceed the revenue being generated on broadcast entertainment. Whenever those sort of curves cross, that's going to be a really important tipping point, I think, and that's going to mark a really a watershed moment. And then a reminder here from Bob Bakish that even though, and this is their overall ad revenue is $1 billion, it's worth noting from a monetization standpoint, though, that Pluto TV is essentially still just a U.S. business. That is a theme that I think that I'm going to touch on here that you're going to see over and over and over. 2022, I think, is going to be the year of growth. That growth has already started. It's not like, everybody's taking their first foot forward, but it's really going to be a focal point of a lot of these services strategies. It's emerged as a core strategy, ad supported in general. So you see a lot of big names with, Fox and the Tubi acquisition, and Comcast and Xumo, and Pluto for, Viacom CBS, which isn't a new acquisition, but it really underscores the point that even the bigger organizations out there are recognizing where everything is shifting, where the demand is, and the need for non-subscription models to support and to complement the existing subscription models. So there's some big players and there's some big dollars being invested. Which, by the way, I'll mention quickly, is something that, a decade ago when I was licensing content out for an independent, I had a hard time, sort of clearing things through the television department sometimes, or through management, because they always wanted to reserve television rights, and monetizing something on an ad-supported basis was seen as, at the time, devaluing the content, even though it was content that was just sitting there sort of collecting dust because there wasn't an active or upcoming TV license. It would interfere with potential TV deals. And so nobody wanted to authorize, internet at the time, as it was called. It was a broad sort of internet right. Nobody wanted to authorize it for digital streaming. My retort to that was always, well, if it's sitting there collecting dust, how valuable is it? How can I devalue something that is driving no value? And over time, as you've seen over the last decade now, and especially today, it's no longer that way. It's not devaluing. It is necessary. It is necessary. It is important, and it's time to invest in it. And all these companies are doing that. So to start off with, I wanted to share some results. I think it's important to understand where the audience is, where the consumer is, what their preferences are. Let's take a pulse sort of the consumer in how they view AVOD and FAST, ad-supported options in general. And so we had a series of surveys in the second half of the year. We had a survey in the US for 4K. It was served about 4,000 people, the 4,000 TV time users, and I'll go into what TV time is in case you're not aware, very, very briefly. We did that in June. We did another survey among 10,000 panelists in Europe in August, and then another one for 2,000 that was AVOD fast focused in October. And when I say panelists, I'm talking about our TV time users. I'm not going to go into a full TV time pitch here, but I think it's important to know where the panelists are being sourced. We have an app there. If you think about who is using the app, it's a utility that people are using to complement their TV and movie viewing. They create their watch lists from it and manage their watch list. They look at, they ask us to notify them of content before it becomes available after they've added content to their watch list. So there's a movie or a series coming up, we'll ping them when it becomes available so they can go watch it. They engage with other audience members, and that's really where that carrot is for usage here. These are the equivalent of early adopters for technology. These are early content adopters. These are the tip of the spear. These are super engaged, high value viewers. And so they use this app to complement their viewing and to help enhance their viewing. And so we surveyed them. We thought, well, here's this panel of highly engaged audience members who are early content adopters. We want their opinion. And so we started off asking them, okay, so what is it that is driving you to ad supported? Do you think there are too many services? And we looked at France, Italy, Spain, UK, and US, and they said, yeah, it's getting too expensive. And what I found interesting here is the results, while the percentages differ slightly, everybody pretty much, with the exception of a couple of points here and there, everybody pretty much felt the same way, regardless of country. It's getting really expensive. It's annoying to switch between services all the time, trying to figure out what's on which service. That's part of the need for universal browse and discovery to help the consumer try to navigate that landscape. It's getting really complicated to find what I'm looking for. I don't have enough time. There are too many accounts. Quality is decreasing. I think that is less. I mean, it goes in waves, right? I don't think the quality is decreasing personally. I think that's why that's one of the lesser chosen options here. But I think there's just a general sense of frustration. So we said, okay, well, how aware are you of free streaming platforms? And about 84% of our respondents were aware of at least one of the services. 60% were aware of Peacock's free service. So they're doing a really good job in promoting that service and promoting the awareness of that service. But in general, awareness is pretty high. So that's great. That's good that awareness is there, even if not everybody is choosing ad-supported as their first option yet. And there's going to be some percentage of the population that just is not going to. They're just very ad averse. But in general, it's becoming more and more accepted among people who are looking for digital options. Looking at awareness by age, we see older audiences in general. It's not entirely surprising because it's older audiences. I think they're more accustomed to advertising. The younger audiences tend to be the first cord cutters. A lot of them are cord nevers. And so I know my kids are among them. When they watch live viewing, we do subscribe to a sort of digital cable service. But when we're watching live programming, my kids who are younger, they're still asking me, well, skip the ads. I'm like, well, I can't skip the ads. It's live. Live is live, and it's not an option. So I think there's a younger audience that may be a little bit more averse or maybe just not used to it and needs to get accustomed to that. But it's the older audiences, and it's not necessarily a surprise. And it seems to be a consistent pattern across TV and movie services. When we look at international, it's pretty much the same. There's somewhat greater awareness in Europe than there is in the US, but that could just be a rounding error. I think the general consensus is that awareness is there, and that makes the opportunity pretty large. It's not like you have to build awareness and you really have to do boots on the ground type of stuff, that awareness and that demand is there. So we started looking at frequency and started saying, okay, well, so if you're aware and you're watching it, what does that viewing behavior look like? So in the past month, have you watched a program or movie on a free streamer? And about half of people have, and about half of people haven't, or they're not really sure. So that's great. I think there's two takeaways here. One is if half of the people surveyed are saying, yes, I have watched on a free streamer, that means that is one of their options, right, for viewing, and they're going to that option. The flip side of that is that half of them aren't, which means there's still opportunity there, which is great. That means that there's a lot of growth potential still. And nearly half of free streamers, streaming users, view a platform at least a few times. So about 22% every day and 26% a few times a week. So again, so that's 48%, about half, right? So about half of people who are watching it are going to it multiple times per week, if not every day. And then that means, flip side, half of the people aren't. So they're going there. Usage is just a little more infrequent. And so there's some opportunities there, and we'll go into what specifically those opportunities are. But there's opportunities there to drive more frequency, right? So they're using it, and that's great. So what can we do to get them to use it more? How often is free streaming, is ad-supported streaming your first choice? Again, about 20% said it's always their first choice. So they prefer a free option. And about another 17% said that it is frequently their first choice. So that's great. You got about 37% there. I'll call it a third. It's a little bit more than a third, but about a third of people are saying, yeah, you know what? It's always or frequently my first choice. And then that means that you've got another, so it says 37% are frequently or always. So you got another 63% that they're saying, sometimes, or, never really. They're going to other options, presumably, SVOD options. So let's break that down a little bit more. What do you do, when you're watching AVOD? So if you're there, right, if the majority of users are there to watch a specific program or browse available content, right? So that's the overwhelming reason for them going. They're saying, hey, I got something specific in mind, and my guess is that's probably specific to AVOD, right? Because it's easier to just sort of, if you look at this other option here, I just want to search through options and see if something interests me. That's a kind of experience that I think of when I think of like a Pluto or a Tubi, or a lot of those that have those that aggregate a lot of fast channels or program a lot of fast channels. They're really serving a lot of niche content, thematic content, but they're also giving you more of that browsing type of experience. You can browse on AVOD as well, but when I think of browsing, I think of channel surfing. So I think more and more you're seeing options emerge where they're trying to approximate that channel browsing kind of experience, even like a Netflix, where they're saying, they introduced the option where you can just select, just show me something, right? Just recommend something. I just want to start something. I don't want to browse manually, just show me something. I think you're seeing more options there about user experience, where you're trying to really give users options. You can do either. You can easily find something specific that you're looking for, find a specific themed channel that you're looking for, or you can browse. But it really is like, I want to watch a specific program, or I want to browse. Those are the two reasons that people are the behaviorally how they're approaching ad supported. And then if you break that out a little bit more, I think it's pretty consistent in terms of age breakout. So again, it's across multiple age segments that it's specific programs that are driving that viewership, or the ability to really browse because they're looking for something. Maybe they didn't find what they wanted on SVOD. And so they're looking to see what options exist on an ad-supported basis. This is an important one, I think, for a lot of us here, because there's all types of programming available across. You think of, like, especially for fast options. there are so many different categories of content being programmed for different types of people. But at the end of the day, it's again that tentpole kind of movie, television series experience that's driving the viewership. Those are the primary categories. And it's women. It's women. It's females that are driving that experience. Actually, it's females that are driving the majority of those content categories. It's not until you come to science and technology, news and sports and other, where you have those male-dominated categories. But it really is, you know, women who are driving that viewership currently for movies and television shows and a lot of related content. That's important. I'm going to come back to that, but put a mental flag on that. And then when you break it out by age bucket as well, again, it's movies and reruns of older series, but it's a lot more even for movies between the younger audiences and the older audiences. Reruns of older series are, you know, dominated by the older audience, but again, that's sort of inherent in the category, right? It's reruns of older series. You had to probably have been around for those series, or, you know, awareness of those series is probably lower for the younger age bracket than it is for the older. Then there's documentaries. Again, it's the older age segment that is driving that. Kids and family shows, younger, it's a tautology. So again, not really any surprises there. The majority of the categories, if we know that it's the older audiences that are going to view ad-supported before the younger audiences, it's not surprising that it's also the older age group that is driving the viewership for the majority of the categories. But I think it's interesting that movies is we'll call it even though there's a slight edge to the younger audiences. So despite older audiences driving ad-supported, movie viewing is about half and half. In the past month, have you watched a program or movie on a free streamer? Half said yes, half said no. Hopefully by now you're starting to see a bit of a theme here, a recurring theme where there's about 50-50. It's like, yeah, half of people are aware and they're viewing it regularly, and half of people are viewing it not regularly or not aware. And there's more opportunity to tap into that. You know, so again, this is just sort of confirming the potential that's there, the opportunity that's there. This is not a mature distribution platform yet. So among those, though, that have the rare or never reported rarely or never really using ad-supported options, and let's break it out by gender. But what are those? What are we being told by people, right? What are those reasons? I was not aware of the free streaming services is one. Some tried them and didn't like it, so they sampled it and rejected. I've been told the programming isn't interested. That's a minority. That's less than 10%. So that's good. It's not like there's some negative, you know, word of mouth going on about ad supported. I think people are still in discovery mode. It's not like there's some consensus out there that the programming is subpar. There aren't enough original programs is again another one of those top responses. That's an important one. And again, just like that other note about what is driving, where was it? What is driving the viewership being movies? That's one mental note. That's one flag. This is another one. There aren't enough original programs. So I'm going to ask you to flag that one as well, because we're going to come back to that. But nearly 30% of everyone sampled and rejected. So that's kind of a problem. We'll come back to that one as well. Reasons for rare and never usage by age. This is interesting. So awareness is lower among that younger audience. They're saying, hey, we have a greater number of younger respondents are telling us I was not aware of the free streaming services. So I think clearly there's more that services can do to tap into that younger age segment and promote that awareness and get them to sample it. And hopefully when they do sample it, there's some compelling content there that they can latch onto. Certainly we know that movies is one of those that the younger audiences are sort of over-indexing on relative to the amount of viewership there for the younger audiences. Tried it and didn't like the programming. Then again, there's I've been told the programming isn't interested. Point being here is that there's some certain trends, but it's these outliers that that are the ones that are really driving what we can do. Like those are the opportunities. It's those outliers. There's an outlier of awareness for the younger audience. That's a problem. And so that needs to be addressed. And in general, the consensus that there aren't enough original programs is also something that I think is going to help drive, when they do sample, drive that viewership. So when they do sample, make sure there's some compelling original programming there for younger audiences. So then when you drive them to your platform and they sample it, there's going to be something there that's going to keep them. So what are the reasons for rarely or never sampling specifically? There's just a certain percentage of people that are ad averse. We know that. Slight increase there for the younger age demo, but again, that's not a huge difference. Depending, there's just always going to be a percentage of people, regardless of age, regardless of gender, that are just going to be ad averse. There's still ways of generating ad revenue that is not just hitting them with ad after ad after ad. Or there might be a reason that they've had bad, advertising experiences with digital. So I think there's ways to decrease those numbers. And then there's just those people that prefer their SVOD first. There's probably an overlap between them. They prefer their SVOD first because they don't like ads. I think what is a reason for optimism is that, again, program quality is low. Is not something that we're hearing much of. So it's not like there's this overwhelming consensus that programming on ad-supported is bad. That's a good thing. So let's sort of recap 2021. So the awareness is high, but there's room to grow, particularly with the younger segments. There is not just occasional viewing. So people who are using ad-supported streaming, they're going to it multiple times per week. Original programming is important to draw in those new or reluctant AVOD fast viewers. Movies and legacy TV series are the most popular, and women are driving viewership in those content categories. Those three are really, really important because what we saw is the first time an AVOD original made our top 10 most streamed movies lists in December. That was Zoe's Extraordinary Christmas on the Roku channel. The streaming original, it's always been dominated by the premium SVOD services, right? The top 5, 6, 7 options. Those are the ones that we always see that really comprise that top 10 list. This is the first time we saw an AVOD original. And it's important to note that, again, original programming is important. Movies and legacy TV series are important, and women are driving it. Roku didn't stumble on Zoe's and greenlight Zoe's as an accident, right? This isn't a lightning in a bottle kind of thing. Original programming, movie, women, female targeting. So, the female audience this is an overwhelming, female audience for this movie. So Roku knew what they were doing. They took advantage of that demand. They took advantage of the demographics driving ad viewing, and they nailed it. So we expect to see more of this. I'm going to pause because the next part of it is we're getting away from the data side. Now we're looking at, okay, so there's growth and there's an increase in velocity of licensing in order to support all of these options. That's problematic for a number of reasons. So we're going to talk a little bit about what those problems are and then what we're doing, some of the solutions that we have and how we're trying to address it. So quick pause there.
Thank you. And super valuable, interesting data. And in some cases, really surprising, actually. I was surprised to see, for example, I think it's really interesting that folks are using FAST as a way to browse, like channel surfing, like those of us that remember channel surfing. I used to do with the 50 channels that you had on your cable box or something. And I mean, that's what we're supposed to be doing with an AVOD library. You're supposed to be able to browse through, watch trailers and pick something. But it becomes kind of the tyranny of choice because there's too many things. And that's what's led folks to just say, just play something. And I wonder if that becomes a real use case for FAST. I think that's really actually kind of cool. And it makes it much easier when you do know something that you want to watch. Well, hey, you turn to an AVOD service. That really does make sense, right? You go to the video store because you know what you're going to watch. You find it on the shelf, and then you take it home and make your popcorn and watch it, as opposed to just surfing through some stuff.
Yeah, and that I can't speak for everybody, but that reflects, you know, our own usage of you know, a fast channel aggregation service like a Pluto or a Tubi, where I've got a handful of networks, fast channels that, you know, I know are interesting to me. Something like at the end of the day, if there's nothing else that I want to watch, or I don't have anything specific in mind, I'm going to throw on the MST3K channel, right? Just because it's nostalgic for me. It's something I grew up with. It's of interest. I know I can always put on, it's comfort viewing. I can always put that on and be happy with what's there, you know, and that's why they're really targeting a lot of these programs. It's always nostalgic or thematic or niche. Not always, but most of them are programmed in that way, because that's really what they want to draw you in for.
Yeah, that's what I do too. You know, I'll put up like the oldies TV channel on Pluto or something, right? And tune into an episode of The Love Boat for old time's sake. Yep. And it's comfort viewing. I just can't get enough of that Charo also. We do have a couple questions from folks. Thanks everybody for dropping your questions into the Q&A bin and into the chat. First of all, this question to what's the difference between AVOD and FAST? Vince, do you have a definition that you like?
It's on demand versus, I don't want to call it live, but linear, right? It's on demand versus linear. So one is, you know, AVOD is you're presented with all of the individual pieces of content that you can start or stop, you know, on demand. And the other is content programming that has been aggregated into typically some sort of thematic channel where you just sort of tune in, you know, and that programming just sort of runs.
I'm going to take this opportunity to use this question as a plug for the OTT.X terms glossary. We have one. It's out on the OTT.X website, and I just tossed a link to it into the chat, so you can refer to it there. We got together with a bunch of our members and folks that like to define terms, and came up with a big long list of terms in the space, and just added some more for the ad space. Yeah, that's a FAST channel. The way that we've defined it is an ad-supported television provided to the user for free. AVOD is ad-supported television. I'm sorry, AVOD is a nonlinear IP-delivered audiovisual content offering that includes advertisements. In contrast to ad-supported television, the user determines what content is played. So you can find out about those and many more terms out on the glossary. Thanks for the question, by the way. Let's see. Regarding the slides, yes, we'll have the slides available, and the recording as well. You can find that out on the OTT.X site. Detailed question, older programs. You have in some of your data representing older programs. What's your definition for those? What is an older program?
Yeah, we didn't have like a definition, because this is a survey, so we don't want to give a whole lot of definitions and put timeframes around things to the panelists. We're sort of things that people consider to be older programming. I think it's, generally speaking, content that has sort of run its course, right? It's been completed. There's no new episodes being released. It's something that we collectively refer to as library. We didn't put any time constraints on that.
Got it. Okay, let's do a couple more questions and then get you back to your regular programming. You mentioned Roku's filmmaking the top 10. Has there been a TV series that has made the top 10 and or have strong showing in the FAST AVOD arena? What were the qualities of such programming?
Good question. I don't know. The list that I gave you was specifically movies. It was a top 10 list of streaming movies. We have a separate list of for television content. That list is made available on a regular basis. We, check our LinkedIn. You can subscribe to a newsletter. You can get a lot of those rankers. We do domestic, we do international for a handful of markets, like a lot of FIGS UK or Brazil. I would encourage you to go there and check those out. Off the top of my head, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that something has at some point. There's been a lot more of the television content made available so far. So, and then what is like a streaming, original as well is like, something that was developed for NBCU and was it was made available for Peacock as well. And there's a lot of overlap there. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that something has cracked a top 10 for TV.
All right, great. Let's pause there. We have a bunch more questions, and we'll see if we hopefully have some time to get to the rest of those and others. But I want to give the stage back to Vince to finish up the rest of your presentation. Thanks, Vince.
Sure. I know we're short on time, so I'll make this quick. So what do we expect for 2022? As I mentioned before, international expansion is going to be a major core part of all of these companies' strategies. The continued rise of fast channel distribution. I don't know how many new fast channels we're going to see. We're going to see some, but I do believe that it's the distribution, it's proliferation of those channels that you're going to see. The investment in original content vis-a-vis the Roku example. Roku is not the only one. I assure you, we're hearing from a lot of them that are investing in original content. An investment in local content, because it's the same thing. Different cultures consume content differently. Not everything that is developed for a US audience is going to play well in all territories. So you need to invest in local content. But the problem is, with growth comes growing pains. So you think about the velocity, like the rate of expansion here, and therefore the rate of licensing is increasing at such a rapid rate that the systems that we have in place that have historically worked for smaller rates of licensing, smaller volumes of avails, smaller volumes of libraries for service, right? Smaller libraries. There wasn't a need to retain a library of 10,000 catalog pieces for 50 countries. And by the way, rights differ from one country to the next. Avail windows differ. And so there's this constant shifting of what is available and what isn't, things popping in and out of existence and licensing new content, doing it globally for a deep library. That's an insane amount of licenses to consider, avails to process. Historically, those systems we have in place can't support that. The good thing is that you have more opportunities to make content available to audiences, maximize your library exploitation, that 80% that hasn't driven the 20% of your revenue, promote your branding, but you have more contracts, more avails, more rights, more windows, more financial processes, or more things that need to be fed into that financial process in order to manage what are typically a lot of manual systems that are disparate. And those systems, what do they look like? So think about a platform. They're taking in avails, and then they have to present those avails with metadata to an acquisitions team who has to curate from all of those avails, transition them into licenses, attach them to contracts and a rights management system. And then performance is going to dictate what the royalties out are. And that's a different process. It's spreadsheets here. It's a rights system there. It's a Salesforce here. Nothing talks to each other. And so our approach is really to streamline it. Just take all those processes, or we can integrate with your existing processes. We're going to give you one platform to manage this. And it's slightly different whether you are a platform bringing avails in, or you are a distributor, or a fast channel, and it's rights out, or it's getting your channel out there. You have different challenges. There's still a need to support velocity and scale in order to grow. So that's the same, but the specific needs might be a little different. So whether you're doing acquisitions where you need to scale to manage, thousands of titles being acquired per month, sometimes if you're a larger company like a Pluto, you need to support sales. So manage your outbound sales flows and avails across all the different platforms. Because every time you send your avails out, that's another document that you've got to update. If you have pricing, if you have window changes, those are all, for across all of your different licensees, those are all things that are going to create manual workload for you that we help automate. Supply chain, so connecting the platforms, making sure you're bringing in metadata and enriching those avails for your acquisitions team so they can make those decisions. How do you manage the assets and track the assets across multiple different labs? And ultimately, how do you feed that all into an accounting and finance system that is allowing you to recognize revenue more quickly and report out more quickly? So here's how we're helping platforms. We're sitting here in the middle. So we operate the TVDB, but we can integrate with a Grace Note or an IMDb or any of those metadata services. We can bring in your avails from content providers, enrich it with that metadata. We integrate bidirectionally with a client CMS or a MAM to act as a source of truth for everything. We'll call out to the lab partners, place orders automatically, track the status of those orders. But really, it's about managing all of that centrally. So it's not, spreadsheets over here. Oops. It's not spreadsheets over here and manually placing orders over here and then updating things over here in a different process. It really is just managing everything, connecting everything through a centralized platform to manage the process with transparency. In the case of distribution, it's similar. But it could be performance reporting where you've got, instead of avails coming into you, you have performance reports coming in from all of your different licensing partners, just like you have the outbound avails sheets that you have to manage. You have differing data formats. There's title matching elements. For fast reporting, it's especially problematic. These are actual, I've hid the platform names, and this is mocked up data. If you're a fan of UHF, there's some Easter eggs here. But these are actual reports. And the problem is, number one, series is present, but there's no episode detail. There's no title identifiers for matching. Here's another example. This is an actual report format where there's no title detail of any kind. You just have a timestamp. And for your fast channel, it's like, how do you allocate, how do you attribute this performance data to a title when no title is being given? Well, the answer, and here's finally another example where, again, there's no title detail of any kind, no title identifiers. We have a process where we will map it to a digital linear schedule and then map it to a product master, bring it into a centralized platform so that people can do analytics. Because if you're doing programming, you need analytics. You need to know what's working where and when in order to make good programming decisions. FAST is still sort of in its infancy, or it's nascent, so it's not a mature market. So a lot of these details need to be worked out. But if we're managing the outbound avails from distributors to platforms, and we're also aggregating inbound avails for platforms, we're sort of sitting on both sides of this. We're helping manage avails out, we're helping manage avails in. Why don't we just connect everything? And that's really what the future of the company is we're connecting everything. Let's not do this. Let all these spreadsheets out and spreadsheets in. It's great that we're getting paid to help manage that today. We love that. But those are services that exist because there isn't a better way, right? And so we thought, let's build a better way. If we're managing both sides of it, let's just connect everything in a platform, make it simple. And then, oh, by the way, we also have first-party data about, demography, about, age and gender. We have historical data. We've been doing, the data aggregation from the media morph systems that we've acquired. They've been doing this for a decade for every major studio and virtually every network and cable group, virtually, not literally, but we've got a lot of data. And it's global, it's actual performance data. So we built a predictive model that takes our audience data from the TV time side, where people are telling us what they want to watch, managing their watch list, telling us what they are watching, and engaging. We're taking that data and taking our historical performance data, modeling it, and then supplementing it with a demand score. But at the end of the day, that's, you can use the demand score, you can choose not to use the demand score, you can choose not to use the data we give you. But it's really about just making this a more efficient process. Those old ways of doing things are not going to support the growth velocity and scale that the industry needs. There needs to be a better way. And if we're getting paid to do both sides anyways, then why don't we just connect them in a platform? And we think that that's really going to transform the way that licensing is done going forward. I know that we are sort of out of time or running out of time, but as a couple of examples, we're helping Tastemade. Tastemade was the first FAST channel that we signed to help them do their performance aggregation so that they can make better programming decisions. Pluto is one of the more recent platforms that we've signed to help do that same sort of scaling with the tens of thousands of avails that they have coming in with global expansion. They need help streamlining that process. So that's what we're helping them do today. We work with a number of clients. Here's our brag slide. I don't know if we have time for additional Q&A, but I'll stop there.
Thanks, Vince. Yeah, we do have some time for some more discussion, some Q&A. And I just first want to just say that I love what you're doing personally at WIP, and we're huge supporters of your company and all the organizations in the technology and service provider space for really the important work that you're doing to help the industry overcome what we kind of call the swirling vortex of spreadsheets and PDFs and Word documents. I lived it back in 2006, 2007, and for the next decade or so when we launched Xbox and at a number of other companies. And it really becomes a huge encumbrance to growing your business. You can get it off the ground using those kind of processes and manual stuff and people, but at some point you can't hire more people. Even if you have the money, you don't have room for them. It was like, well, where are we going to put all of the people that we need to hire to go process and manage all this stuff? Because it's just a mess. And then we had to go back in and fix it, and it took years, and we had a lot of engineers, a lot of software developers to do it, but it still took a really, really long time. And there's, a lot of expense to it. So, I mean, my advice, having been through it, is start now. It's work, but there's a lot of organizations, a lot of companies that are out there that have figured it out. And WIP's a great example. Talk to Vince, talk to others, other OTT.X members, talk to me. We can point you in the right direction.
Yeah, thank you for that. No, I'll note that we don't have to be doing everything for you. If you're happy with systems you've got, then great, but let's connect them. Like, let's help you manage it all, yeah. Right? It's more than anything. It's about centrally managing things so that, it's not just different people doing different things and not collaborating effectively. Automation is part of it, but management is another big part.
The key is having systems, right? And it's interesting too in the advertising space, because that's another huge wild card. Is just managing, a whole bunch of other content, because they're ads. There's rights associated with all of that stuff. And it kind of brings up the point that one of our attendees brought up a question about the quality of advertising execution. I think we've all experienced that. Where it can be kind of jarring going from, the audio is completely different, the resolution is different. You see the same ad over and over and over again. What is that something that when you're looking at your consumer data, did that come up at all as a determinant for folks, for consumers in their lack of appreciation maybe for ad-supported?
I'm sure that's probably driving some of that aversion to ad supported, but we didn't ask that specifically. We were really trying to focus on, what is the content that's driving it? What is your behavior like? How often are you using it? What does the awareness look like? We weren't getting as granular as, your ad experience or your UX experience. Are you getting good recommendations? Do you feel like they're doing a good job of presenting content? That's sort of a whole different level of qualitative data that we didn't really want to focus on. We really wanted to focus on, like, what are the high level opportunities? What does a high level awareness and behavior look like? So we can identify, some opportunities and make some consensus about what is that viewership today? What is that demand today? And what are the high level problems? I think that is one, right? But there's a whole other level of the advertising experience that we weren't really getting into for these surveys.
I think that's one of the reasons maybe why people would say, I don't like ads, because, a lot of times it's just not very good, the whole ad experience. If ads are better, if the experience of going from one to another is better, then maybe people are less bothered by them.
Over time, I think that the industry will collectively figure that out, so that you're not like the frequency right now, right? Depending on which channels you're watching, the frequency of the ads that you get served are super high. Like it's the same ads over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
But in order to cut down on the frequency, you need more ad dollars and a greater diversity of ads, campaigns being run on those digital platforms. And I think just as those ad dollars shift, that's something that, and companies are aware of this, but that's a behavior that's going to shift as well.
Yeah, I want to use that also as a gratuitous plug for next week's webinar. Thank you, Jose, for reminding us of that. You can check out the chat window right now to the link to register for next week's webinar, which is entitled Leveraging Creativity in Advertising to Minimize Churn and Maximize Attention. So very pertinent to this very discussion. We've got a few more minutes. One thought question that I had when you're in the second half of your presentation, Vince, was, you mentioned you had some examples of companies that you're working with and success stories. How long do these projects take, right? If I'm running my whole business on spreadsheets or systems that are there, but they're not really integrated, what can I expect in terms of like, like how long is it? Is this like a couple of years? Can I do it in a month? Like what? I know it varies, but can you give us some idea on sort of the scale of these kinds of projects?
Yeah, so it's pretty much what you said. It really does depend because every single implementation is a little bit different. Depending on like, are we doing soup to nuts for you? Right. In the case of like a Pluto, where we're doing, contracts and rights and avails aggregations and enrichment and asset order management. Those are all things that, okay, so we have to, which systems of yours do we have to integrate with? What are your requirements? There's a project blueprinting and scoping process because we want to make sure if we're delivering a customized SaaS solution, we're integrating with some third-party services or with your MAM or with your metadata, third-party metadata source. Those are all things that we have to take into consideration. So yeah, for some, it could take a year or more. But if you're a fast channel and you just go, I need performance tracking aggregation. I can't take all of this data and make use of it. Mm-hmm. Can you help me out there? That's something that, depending on how many channels and how many different platforms and how many different, because we have to build a transform process to bring all of that in. Depending on the volume, it can be just, a couple of months, 2 to 4 months, depending. So not too long for really basic implementations, but huge organizations that have a lot of systems to integrate with, that could take a lot longer.
And you can take it in bite-sized chunks. That's the other thing. Like, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing, to start off with. You're going to get value out of doing some of it. And again, I just encourage folks that are on this webinar, and if you're in the business, you're getting started, or wherever you are in it, really consider making the investments. And it is an investment. It costs money, and that's why people don't do it. Like, I need to pay for content, or I need to write software, and I got to do user experience, and all that stuff's important. But at some point, this is going to be inhibitive to your business. And the longer you wait, the bigger the investment is going to be to fix it. Yeah. All right. Well, I would love to hang out and talk a lot longer, Vince. You gave us a lot of great data and a lot of great information, and I'm just super passionate about the space that you're in. I think we all are. That's why we're here. But time is running out. So I'm going to close things up for us. Thank you, Vince. Really, really appreciate your being here. Great data. Thank you also to Whip. You guys are incredible partners. We love working with you. And thanks to everybody for attending this edition of the OTT.X Wednesday webinar series. As I mentioned, there's another one coming up just next week. So do sign up for that. Tell your friends. We'd love to see you here. As always, the session was recorded, and it's going to be available on the OTT.X website at OTT.X.org, along with a whole lot of other valuable videos and presentations from our online events over the last year plus. We've recently released our amazing slate of events and activities, both in person and online, for the 2022 calendar year. You can check out all of that stuff on the OTT.X.org site. Just a couple of details to get us kicked off this year. Coming right up on February 23rd is our first conference, OTT.X Online Live. You can catch it in your very own bedroom, living room, home office, gym, studio, wherever you sit and watch webinars. You can check us out. we're going to be bringing together some of our industry's boldest and brightest for a panoply of panels, presentations, prognostications about the business of over-the-top streaming. We'll be getting together the following day in person. That's February 24th, when the OTT.X Roundtable discussion series returns to Los Angeles. It's a great opportunity to connect with colleagues across the ecosystem and share ideas about the business of over-the-top video. Hope to see you all there. You can find out more about all of these events and the rest of the calendar year out on OTTX.org. I'm going to drop our events and programs link into the chat, so you can jump over there right now and learn more in detail right here and now. So with that, I'm going to conclude today's webinar. Thanks again for joining us, and have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you again, OTT.X. Really appreciate it.
Bye, everyone.